She doesn't scream when she leaves. She reorganizes the crime scene. The blade isn't in your back, it's in your hand. And she's already telling the village how you plunged it in yourself. You're still staring at the door, but she's already rewritten the story, repainted her face in innocence, and chosen which sin you'll confess under her silence. You thought love was the contract. She knew it was the cover. Every caress was reconnaissance. Every "it's fine" was ammunition stored. When she said you've changed, it was her way of rehearsing the verdict, not seeking the truth. You don't realize it yet, but her exit began long before your first suspicion. It began the moment she needed to be seen as the victim. You gave your heart. She took the narrative. If this whisper already knows, you let it echo. Like the video. Leave your shadow in the comments. Subscribe and stay near the silence. The real betrayal never shouts. It only rearranges the evidence. She prepares her escape not with distance, but by sanctifying her image so when she leaves, you're already guilty. It began before you noticed the silence, before she stopped laughing at your jokes, before her phone face down at dinner. It began with a look she gave a stranger, not lust, not longing, but performance, a rehearsed innocence. That was when she started laundering her image, polishing the mirror that would eventually reflect your downfall. You thought she was yours, still inside the garden, still sipping from your hand. But she had already planted the exit, not at the door, in the minds of others, and in your own. You didn't see the strategy in her softness, the meticulous curation of virtue. She let herself be seen only in glowing frames, kind, generous, trying her best. She cried at the right moments, forgave too quickly, and mentioned your name with a half smile, as if she carried a weight she was too noble to name. You mistook it for love. It was theater. Reputation is the battlefield Machiavelli always favored, not the sword but the whisper before it. She wore the halo not as virtue, but as armor. You were the perfect opponent, still believing conflict was won by logic, that love unraveled in fairness, in shared fault, in mature discussion. But Machiavellian exit does not seek justice, it seeks legacy. If she leaves looking like a saint, it doesn't matter what she did. The evidence rots if no one is willing to see it. And so she preserved her sanctity like currency. She didn't need to hurt you. She only needed to make sure no one believed you were the one bleeding. You recall the fights, the ones where she stayed quiet too long, not out of sadness, but calculation. She knew silence isn't a void, it's a weapon. She didn't accuse you. She let you accuse yourself. She left you pacing the room, chasing apologies for things you didn't understand. And when you asked what was wrong, she answered with that gentle shake of the head, not denial, but deposition. The more confused you looked, the more composed she became, and you mistook her poise for peace. It wasn't. It was packaging. Every act of goodwill had timing. Each forgiveness had an audience. When she told her friends how patient she was being, she wasn't venting, she was stacking receipts. When she said, "I just want to understand him," she wasn't pleading, she was rehearsing her closing statement. You heard compassion, they heard martyrdom. By the time you began to unravel, she had already collected enough testimonials to leave without suspicion. A queen in white, you, a man with frayed nerves and an unfinished sentence. This is the cruelty of subtle politics. You were not left. You were erased, but only after she had ensured her departure would look holy. She didn't break up with you. She escaped you, and only after enough bystanders had been groomed to believe you were the cage. And when she told her mother you'd been distant, that wasn't a complaint. It was a pre-alibi. The gap between truth and perception is where the real betrayal breeds. And she learned how to make that gap unbridgeable. And when she finally said, "I can't do this anymore," it sounded inevitable, like a weather report. She didn't yell, she didn't cry, she watched you do that. That was the final stroke, not cruelty, not detachment, but the slow removal of emotion. So you looked like the one who had lost control. And when others asked what happened, you couldn't explain it without sounding like a villain trying to revise the story. She was so kind. They said, "So patient. You must have done something." And here you are alone, not just in the room, but in the memory. She took the spotlight with her, left you in the shadows, muttering half-finished truths. Every defense you offer now only proves the image she left behind. If you say she lied, you sound bitter. If you say she manipulated, you sound unwell. She knew this. That's why she staged her withdrawal slowly, with strategic acts of virtue. You can't accuse a ghost, especially one draped in white. Now you see the trap. You weren't just discarded, you were overwritten. Her story doesn't need facts, it only needs consistency. She smiles in every photo. She nods during every conversation. She doesn't call you names. She just sighs and says, "I really tried." And that, Machiavelli whispers, is the most ruthless move of all, not to win the war, but to make the enemy look like a tyrant for even noticing one happened. If you still believe love ends with confrontation, you'll keep losing. This wasn't love, it was a campaign, and while you believed in healing, she believed in optics. She wasn't trying to hurt you, she was trying to save her face, and the cleaner it looked, the more monstrous you would appear in contrast. You begged for truth, she offered silence, and then she let you scream into it. The world won't remember the arguments. They'll remember how she remained composed, how she didn't retaliate, how she quietly packed her things, made no scene, and only ever said, "I hope he finds peace." She wore your anger like her alibi. The more upset you became, the more believable her mask appeared. That wasn't a coincidence. That was strategy. Exit is not an event. It's a performance. And you never auditioned for the role you were cast in. You were the backdrop to her rebirth, the discarded storyline she needed to step into her new chapter. And she made sure no trace of your blood stained her dress, because to leave with sympathy is power, and to leave with the crowd's sympathy is empire. She didn't burn bridges, she built statues of herself on the way out. And now, when they speak her name, it echoes with virtue, and when they speak yours, it echoes with doubt. You are the footnote to her elevation, the cautionary tale she never has to tell because your silence, your confusion, your unraveling body of truth already tells it for her. And still, even now, you defend her in your dreams. That's how well she crafted her exit. Even the victim can't name the crime. She stops reflecting your soul not because she can't, but because she must disappear without blame making your confusion look like control. She doesn't shatter the mirror, she dims it, gradually, until you think the darkness is yours. She used to echo you, your laughter, your fears, your doubts. You saw yourself in her eyes and thought it was intimacy, but she was mirroring you not out of love, but out of preparation. Every reflection has an expiration date, and when it nears, she must stop being you, so you become suspicious of yourself. She doesn't accuse, she simply steps back and watches you flail at your own absence. This withdrawal is not sudden, it is glacial, calculated. She does not leave the room, she leaves the connection. You still hear her voice, but no longer feel her presence. She still smiles, but with a delay, as if waiting for a cue that never comes. You reach for her and find compliance, not response, and it maddens you. You ask, "Are we okay?" and she says, "I'm just tired." But the exhaustion is strategic. It buys her time to become emotionally invisible without triggering alarms. You start over-explaining, you start checking your tone, You start apologizing preemptively, and she rewards none of it. She lets you spiral, quietly, politely. The more you try to reconnect, the more her calmness amplifies your desperation, and you do not realize that your desperation is part of the plan. Because now, to anyone watching, you are becoming unpredictable, controlling, always needing to talk. The man who's too intense. She's not pushing, she's retreating, and it is you who looks like you're chasing something irrational. This is where power flips. When she mirrored you, she seemed soft, receptive, understanding. Now, as she removes the mirror, she becomes blank. You speak, and nothing echoes back. That silence, that stillness, it does not mean she is numb. It means she is observing, recording, editing the story in real time. The more you bleed for her attention, the more she documents your unraveling. Not to use now, but later, when she must justify her disappearance. You begin to feel punished, but no crime is named. She has withdrawn her warmth, her affection, her affirmation, but without announcement. You question yourself. Did I miss something? Am I too much? You ask her to tell you what's wrong. She says she doesn't know, but she does. The mirror has done its work. It made you vulnerable, and now that it's gone, you are frantic. She doesn't have to say you're unstable. She just has to appear stable in contrast. You begin to track the timeline. When did she stop calling back quickly? When did she stop saying, "I love you" first? You revisit memories like a detective searching for footprints, but there are none. Only dust where the closeness used to be. This is not abandonment. This is image control. She knows that if she becomes the one who detaches slowly, while you panic visibly, then the narrative will write itself. He was just always on edge. I didn't feel safe, not because of your actions, but because of how your confusion now mimics instability. She still sleeps beside you. She still sends emojis. But her soul is already off sight, rehearsing freedom. You hear her laugh with others. You see her glow in group settings. But when the door closes, she becomes a stranger, still polite, still cooperative, but no longer invested. And that dissonance is your undoing. You can't confront her because what would you say? You don't love me the way you used to. She'd smile gently. What do you mean? I'm here, aren't I? You start monitoring your own reactions, trying to stay calm, trying not to make things worse. And so you suppress your instinct to yell, to cry, to demand clarity. You swallow those truths because she has trained you to believe that her withdrawal is your fault. That if you just stopped being needy, she might come back, but she won't. Because you are no longer useful to her narrative as the sane one. She needs contrast, and your confusion is painting it. You ask for affection, she gives obligation. You offer your heart, she offers a nod, and each gesture confirms her story. She is the composed one. You are the emotional liability. This is the genius of her departure. It is not physical, it is perceptual. She removes herself emotionally while remaining physically present, so you look like the one who's fading, the one who gave up. You did not give up, you were dismissed, and yet she lets you believe reconciliation is possible, just enough hope to keep you from walking away, because if you leave, you take the story with you. But if you stay, if you try harder, if you lose composure, then you write the story she needs. That she was kind, but you were erratic, that she stayed too long, that she ignored the red flags. You didn't have red flags. She painted them by dimming your reflection until you lost sight of yourself. Others begin to notice, not the truth, but the performance. She's been so patient, she never says a bad word about you. And those become her shield. You, the one slowly dissolving in confusion, cannot compete with her calm. You are desperate to be heard, but you cannot speak without sounding like an attacker. You are not the villain, but you have been placed in the villain's frame. She praises your good moments publicly, not out of admiration, but because if she flatters you and still leaves, the world will assume you ruined it. He's such a good guy, she'll say, but I just couldn't stay, and that just is the dagger, vague, final, forgiving. You won't even see it coming until the blade is halfway through. She will leave you, and leave behind a version of you no one will believe you didn't create. This is the art of the slow withdrawal. She does not burn the bridge. She makes you walk off of it, convinced you jumped. She does not accuse. She lets the absence accuse you, and you will replay it, night after night, wondering when you became the storm she had to escape. You didn't. She needed an exit that made her look brave, and what better way than to make survival look like sainthood? You call her one last time. You ask, what happened to us? She says nothing, but in that silence is the entire theater, the velvet curtain of blame closing in slow motion. She didn't change. She just removed the mirror, and in the absence of reflection, you began to see only your own madness. At the moment of leaving, she breaks the narrative not with tears, but with a calm that makes you the storm. It doesn't happen during a fight. It happens after you've calmed down, after you've said sorry again, after you believed you could still fix it. She sits across from you, hands folded, voice smooth, no tremble, no heat, just the stillness of a verdict already written. She says, I just can't do this anymore. And it sounds like mercy, but it isn't. It's a sentence, a final scene delivered in a whisper that makes your heartbreak look like noise. You blink. You try to hold your breath still enough to make her stay, but she's already gone. Not out the door, she's been gone for months. This is just the final curtain, the public exit, the scene where she lets the audience see her sorrow while you become the problem. You beg her to talk. She says there's nothing to talk about, and that's how she wins, because silence, at the right moment, is a weapon that rewrites history. The transfer has begun. She doesn't accuse you directly, that would break the illusion. She doesn't say you hurt me. She says, I don't feel like myself anymore. And that, somehow, becomes your fault. She says she's been walking on eggshells, and now you're the controlling one. You're stunned. You don't even recognize the person she's describing, but she's crafted it so carefully, so slowly, that even your confusion now looks like denial. You remind her of everything you did, how you tried, how you showed up, how you changed. She nods, tears in her eyes, but she's already repositioned the chessboard. Your efforts are no longer proof of love. They're proof of guilt. I know you tried, she whispers, but it always felt like I had to earn your peace. And just like that, your calm becomes coercion, your affection becomes pressure, your confusion becomes volatility. Now, when you raise your voice not in anger, but in fear, she flinches, not because she's scared, but because she wants you to see what you've become. She wants witnesses, not in the room, but in the future. Every action you take in this final moment is another brushstroke in her painting. You are the storm, she is the survivor, and the more you resist, the more believable the story becomes. She leaves nothing behind but your own echo. You reread texts, analyze tones, try to track the moment it all turned. But there is no turning point, only a long, quiet slope designed to make you believe you slid by yourself. You call a friend, try to explain, but they've already heard her version. She said she felt unsafe. They tell you, not unsafe from violence, unsafe from confusion, from your emotional volatility. You never hit her, you never yelled, but you questioned, you worried, you needed, and in the new narrative, need is enough. She walks away with dignity, her face unscarred, you bleeding from wounds she never acknowledged. And yet, she still texts you after. I hope you're okay. It's not compassion, it's closure control. If she checks on you, she seems kind. If you reply with pain, you seem unstable. And if you don't reply, she tells others. I just wanted to make sure he was okay. But he shut me out. She wins both ways. You drown in silence, and she walks on water. You think about posting the truth, telling your side, but there is no safe way to say it. Anything you reveal, screenshots, memories, moments, only confirms the portrait of a man who can't let go. You are now the aggressor by default, not because you harmed her, but because you still feel anything at all. Passion is now pathology. Love is now a liability. You do not get to grieve. You get to be the explanation for her exit. She does not block you. She lets you see her thrive. New photos, new hobbies, new smile. And every time you react, she sighs. He's still watching me. She did not leave a relationship. She left a stage. And now she plays the hero who escaped. And you were never written in the script as anything but a storm that passed. You start to wonder if she ever loved you. But that's not the right question. She may have, but the love was always conditional on its utility. When love no longer served her image, she rebranded the story. Machiavelli knew the state survives not by truth, but by perception. She became the state. You became the rebellion crushed before it could speak. Even now, if you ran into her in public, she would hug you, smile warmly, say, I hope you're doing well. And you'd walk away thinking maybe you were wrong. Maybe she did care. That is the genius of it. She never breaks character. Her calm is her crown. Her softness, a shroud over every silent strategy. She will never say you were cruel. She will just imply that loving you took everything from her. And people believe her because she never complains. She never shouts. She never retaliates. That restraint is her knife. It cuts deeper than blame. It paints her as the reasonable one, the mature one, and you, the man who just couldn't keep her. Not because you failed, but because you still feel. You remember the moment she said, I just want peace. You thought it was mutual, but she meant peace from you. And what is left now is a hollow in your chest where her approval used to live. That's the final theft, not the relationship, but your sense of reality. You question not just what happened, but who you are. Because if she's the calm one and you're the wreckage, maybe you were always the problem. That's the exit wound that never closes. She tells mutual friends, I'll always care about him, and they repeat it to you like it's a gift. But it is salt, not affection. It lets her seem loving without accountability. She leaves you with no clean wound, only infection. A narrative you cannot escape because you were never allowed to write in it. You see her dating again. You hear nothing but praise about how she's finally smiling again, and you carry the blame like a phantom. People don't even ask what happened. They just assume. She doesn't have to defend herself. Your silence indicts you, and still, some nights, you scroll through old messages, looking for the break, the twist, the tell. But Machiavelli never lets you see the dagger. He lets you hold it, then shows the world your hands. She doesn't destroy you. She lets you destroy yourself under the illusion that you still had a chance. That maybe if you had said it better, been calmer, tried harder. But that was the design. The only way she could leave clean was if you looked dirty, and the cleaner you tried to be, the more suspicious you appeared. The final blame transfer is not shouted. It is slipped beneath your skin. so you carry it without knowing where it came from. And now, when someone asks what happened, you pause, because you don't know how to tell a story that was edited in real time, with your voice slowly removed. All you know is that she left, but she left with a story that made you disappear. She left behind no scars, only mirrors that now show a stranger. You wake in the dark, remembering her calm. But was it serenity or the silence of someone already gone?